Well, welcome to the edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. Right off the bat on today's show, this particular piece of kit is going to be very, very interesting coming up in spring of next year. We're going to know a whole lot more about this machine. This is the Gordon Murray design T.50. That 50 harkens back to 50 years of design from one Gordon Murray. Now, if you don't know what Gordon Murray's designed back in the past, think of the McLaren F1. That's a Gordon Murray design. This particular machine, Murray claims, is the last analog supercar that will ever be developed. Now, even though it's going to have a lot of analog setting, there is a lot of digital technology as far as the high-end technology that's coming out in this particular machine we'll talk about here in a wee bit. The power plant is a Cosworth-derived, normally aspirated V12, which Cosworth is claiming is over 100 pounds lighter than the modern-day Formula One power unit, and the thing making well over 700 horsepower at 12,000 RPMs. Yes, you heard me right. And it's going to have an old school H-pattern manual gearbox with 3 pedals in the footwell. This was something that basically the customer base actually desired more than Mr. Murray. Murray wanted to put a sequential gearbox. Now, the sequential gearbox will be making its debut in the track version of this particular machine, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit. Now, let's talk about the rear end of that machine, because you may see a large fan. This harkens back to an old Gordon Murray design, which back in the Aero Wars in Formula One, the Brabham fan car, that particular machine actually apparently would suck air out from underneath the machine, drawing it into the ground. That's what this system basically is doing. These modern-day supercars have a massive underbody diffuser, which basically think of as a flipped upside-down spoiler underneath the vehicle, which will draw the vehicle into the pavement. This fan actually pulls air, some of the trapped air that gets inside of that diffuser situation, and allows the thing to work at maximum efficiency. Also, with it running at lower speeds, it allows it to have a lot higher level of downforce at low speeds, giving the thing maximum amount of traction. Also, too, this thing can be reversed, giving it a low drag setting with a section of air in the back of the car, which gives it a virtual long tail effect. This apparently will bring the coefficient of drag just down to the number 10, which will allow this thing to reach a fantastic amount of top speed, which hopefully we'll know a whole lot more come next spring. Now, they're only going to build 100 of the road cars for the world, and they're only going to build 25 track cars, which is going to have a lot of, well, adjustable downforce levels as far as wings and the front splitter and whatnot. So this is going to be a completely different car along with that sequential gearbox. Now, pricing for the road cars, $2.6 million, and Murray claims that a lot of people have already thrown up their hands in the air, putting down money to own these cars. So if you want to own one, you better get to it right quick. Now, if you can't afford something like this, you could go the McLaren route. McLaren showing off the brand new 620R. This is the top of the tree in the Sports Series lineup inside of McLaren. This is basically the replacement for the 570S GT4. And this is somewhat of a GT4 car that you can drive right on the road. Power comes from a 3.8-liter twin-turbocharged V8, making 610 horsepower, 457 pounds-feet of torque. That is shipped through a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, rear-wheel drive. Obviously, it's got a ton of air work. Massive front diffuser, underbody diffuser, front splitter, rear wing. Now, this all can be adjusted at least from your local McLaren dealership. It'll come in this particular trim, but you can upgrade it to the high downforce levels as well. Super sticky rubber, lightweight wheels and tires. The interior is a little bit more comfort-centric as far as that vehicle is concerned as well. Another little interesting thing is McLaren is showing off the wet weight of this vehicle. Not the dry weight that most folks actually show off as far as their weight levels. This means this thing has full of lubricants, oils, as far as the rear differential lube, all that stuff, coolant, everything, and 90% of the fuel level inside of this vehicle, which means this vehicle weighs just 3,055 pounds. So with the tank nearly topped off, it's just a touch over 3,000 pounds, which is a super lightweight in modern day speak. Now, the trick is they're only going to build 350 of these things for the world. It's going to have a starting price of just under $300,000. And that's before you head over to MSO to get all your one-off goodies possibly made for this particular machine and a lot of extra add-ons into this particular machine. So this vehicle is going to be available right quick in the beginning part of 2020. So you better head down to your McLaren dealership right now. And last up on the list for the second time in Motorcar's existence, the Cannonball. Basically, if you don't know what that is, it's a lap of America, going from one side of the country to the other side as fast as you possibly can, evading police, wildlife, whatever else could come into your path. And a brand new trio of fellas actually took over this record from the fellas that actually had it back in 2013. This trio is Arnie Toman, Doug Tabut, and Berkeley Chadwick. The three of these guys took this heavily modified 2015 E63 AMG Mercedes that they did a ton of work to and a ton of prep work to, where they left the Manhattan-based Red Ball Garage in New York State, the spiritual starting point of the Cannonball, at 12:57 a.m. on November 10th and arrived at Redondo Beach's Portofino Hotel, the spiritual finish line for the old Cannonball, in just 27 hours and 25 minutes, beating the old record in 2013 by over an hour. Now, if you don't know this Cannonball thing, this basically was Cannonball Baker way back in the day, back in the early 1900s, actually ran a motorcycle from one end of the country to the other. This was picked up by Car and Driver CEO, also with the editor at large, Brock Yates, who actually was in the film The Cannonball Run, the actual two films that were run back in the, back in the 70s, 80s. This particular deal was done. They did a handful of Cannonball races across the country, including one that almost happened back in the early 2000s. They took this AMG E63 and did a lot of vinyl work, covering up a lot of the fancy badging, and along with trying to make the rear end of the car look as much like a modern-day full-size Honda or Toyota, to make it look as mundane as they possibly can. Detuned the engine a tad bit to try to make it a little bit more livable, including a ton of M-cab features. We're talking about radar jammers, radar detectors, massive scopes, and the like, huge amount of binocular technology as well, to try to look as far ahead as possible, because this particular challenge takes a lot of luck, a lot of skill, a ton of planning, and of course a lot of, well, just super good fortune. No rain for the entire 2,825 mile trip, along with they were never stopped by law enforcement in any way. In fact, they were only sitting still for 22 minutes as they put a massive fuel cell in the back of this 45-gallon fuel cell, along with the standard 21-gallon fuel cell that actually Mercedes puts in the car from stock. Average speed was 103 miles an hour. Now, they did this thanks to a lot of help from a lot of friends, including having friends at every fuel stop to help fuel up the car, along with running ahead of the group to try to look for, obvious obstacles in their way. Law enforcement, you're talking about road construction, crashes, anything that could be going on that could be in the head of them, including a motorcycle detail the last little bit of the trip to help them to get around Redondo Beach. These guys did a pretty impressive job. In fact, I think they may have put this out of reach for anybody else in the world to ever get this deal done. Pretty cool feat, pretty interesting. It'll be neat to see whether this ever happens in my lifetime ever again. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. Don't forget to like us over on the Facebook page. Links down in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, do so at any time. Get the first dibs on the brand new shows as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again real soon.